We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Welcome back to the B block of Weed Talk News. I'm Karen Black. Over the first half of this year, the state of California has been challenged by Michigan as the #1 cannabis market in the country. The Golden State continues to bring in more revenue, but Michigan is selling more products. California has another problem, and it's with its testing program. Embellished THC percentages and molds and pesticides in some of their flour are just two of the issues. We welcome a new member of the Weed Talk News team this week, LIsa Batista from theflowerco.com. Here's her report.
I'm LIsa Batista from The Flavor Co. with the California Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Our first story involves California Cannabis Testing Lab and the significant battle unfolding as the lab fights to reopen after being shut down by the California Department of Cannabis Control. The lab's attorney, James Anthony, argues that the DCC denied the lab's license renewal based on outdated audit issues from 2 years ago. The lab has already filed a lawsuit claiming a violation of due process. The outcome of this case is significant as it highlights ongoing tensions between cannabis businesses and regulatory bodies, impacting the stability and trust in the legal cannabis market. Next, we turn our attention to Stizzy, one of California's biggest cannabis brands, which is currently buried under a heap of lawsuits. SFGate reports that the brand faces accusations ranging from overstating THC content to illegal cross-state sales and selling pesticide-laden products. Despite these allegations, Stizzy continues to dominate the market with its extensive retail presence and popular vape products. The outcome of these legal battles could impact both Stizzy's future and the broader legal cannabis market in California as major cannabis brands continue to navigate the legal and regulatory frameworks. Finally, in Northern California, the Nevada County Sheriff's Office announced a significant bust of illegal marijuana operations. During July, deputies seized and destroyed over 15,000 illegally grown marijuana plants and about 5,000 pounds of processed cannabis. A 36-year-old man from Grass Valley was charged with illegal cultivation and multiple environmental felonies. The raids uncovered hazardous chemicals and severe environmental violations, emphasizing the dangers and environmental impacts of illegal grows. That's it for this week's California Cannabis Report. I'm LIsa Batista from The Flavor Co. reporting for Weed Talk News.
When it comes to spending on cannabis lobbying for 2Q24, one company is high above the others, and some interesting trends are emerging in the industry. Cresco Labs, a major multi-state operator, is leading the pack of cannabis companies in lobbying expenditures, shelling out a whopping $400,000 in the second quarter alone. This dwarfs the spending of other cannabis giants like Curaleaf at $140,000 and Trulieve at $37,500. Interestingly, despite the buzz around the Farm Bill and its potential impact on the cannabis and hemp industries, only a handful of companies have explicitly mentioned it in their lobbying disclosures. Green Thumb Industries, Good Day Farm, and Scott's Miracle-Gro are among the few that have lobbied on the Farm Bill-related issues. Jazz Pharmaceuticals, owner of the FDA-approved cannabis-derived drug Epidiolex, stands out for its comprehensive lobbying efforts. They've not only addressed the Farm Bill, but also focused on the definition of hemp, issues surrounding cannabis banking, and research into cannabis-derived therapies. Jazz's quarterly lobbying spend of $520,000 exceeds Cresco's, but Jazz is a significantly larger company and in a slightly different business. This surge in lobbying activity reflects the cannabis industry's growing influence and its push for favorable legislation as the sector continues to evolve and expand.
The month of August is National Black Business Month, and with that in mind, New Jersey correspondent Jill Goldsberry connected with Tahir Johnson, a legend of sorts in the cannabis industry who just opened up his dispensary in Trenton, New Jersey. It's called Simply Pure, and it has a connection to another legend in the cannabis industry. Her name is Wanda James.
probably the biggest of them all, meeting Wanda James, the founder of Simply Pure, the first Black-owned dispensary in the country. Who's
That's
what?
yeah.
So
How did you wind up getting connected with her? Because I remember when she opened, that was the biggest thing. And we were all like, "What? This woman opened
yeah,
this? How is this? How is this happening?" So how did you
yeah.
wind up meeting her?
Yeah, so I met Wanda James. Wanda James was actually one of the original founding board members of NCIA. Again, being one of the
Okay.
first not only not only the first Black operator, but one of the first cannabis operators, period, in the country. Right, like Simply Pure is 15 years old, and even before this, she's she's been in cannabis since the medical days, in Colorado, and
Mhm.
transitioned to recreational. So, it's definitely a very well-known brand, but I was doing a webinar for NCIA and I saw her in in the chat, like she was attending it live. And so
Mhm.
I sent her a Facebook message, and we talked on the phone, ended up talking on the phone for like 3 hours. This was long before
Wow.
ever, before I was thinking of applying for the dispensary. This is when I was still in advocacy, and we became
Mhm.
good friends.
You can see that full interview on demand on the Pro Cannabis Media website and on our YouTube channel.
Marianne Cursetjee always has her finger on the pulse of cannabis in Oregon, and this week is no exception. Here she is with news about a ballot initiative that could spark a legal battle in the Beaver State.
I'm Marianne from Alibi with this week's Oregon Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. This November, Oregon voters will decide on whether or not all cannabis businesses, regardless of size, should be required to sign a labor peace agreement. The union has spent more than $2.4 million collecting signatures. Signatures have been validated, and this will head to the ballot as Measure 119. Oregon Business and Industry, which is the state's largest business lobbying group, predicts litigation as this measure is likely in conflict with the National Labor Relations Act. Next, the OLCC's contract with Metric is up for renewal. Following on California's heels, Oregon is hopefully negotiating a good contract. Of specific interest to the industry is batch tagging, system improvements, and the term of the contract. It has been 10 years since the first Metric contract in Oregon, and there are hopes that this year will see a proper RFP process. This past Friday was the second annual Lit Golf Invitational Tournament. Teams from around the industry gathered to play golf, network, and socialize. It was an amazing event, topped off with a visit from U.S. Representative Val Hoyle, who shared her vision for the industry. That's the Oregon Cannabis Report for this week. I'm Marianne with Alibi for Weed Talk News.
Our Michigan correspondent, Amy Carter, is off this week, but here's an interesting story from that state. A marijuana processing company, Sky Labs, is in hot water with state regulators. The Cannabis Regulatory Agency, or CRA, has filed a complaint against Sky Labs, alleging they bought large amounts of unregulated THCA concentrate from out of state and misreported it in mandatory tracking records. This isn't Sky Labs' first run-in with the law. They were fined $100,000 last year and had to surrender their medical marijuana processor license due to safety violations and banned chemicals in their vape products. These new allegations shed light on a shady practice in the cannabis industry where operators mix hemp-derived concentrates from other states into regulated marijuana products, bypassing track and trace requirements. The CRA's complaint lists 8 counts against Sky Labs, highlighting the ongoing challenges in ensuring product integrity and compliance in the cannabis sector. Now let's head south and check in with Kevin Shakir, the Shake Man, who has some developments from Arkansas that will expand the state's medical program.
I'm Kevin Shakir, aka the Shake Man, and this is the Arkansas Cannabis Report for this week, right here on Weed Talk News. Arkansas is abuzz with the news about the Medical Cannabis Expansion Initiative. The Arkansanians for Patient Access APA campaign has received a 30-day extension to gather enough signatures for the November ballot. Here's the lowdown. The APA submitted nearly 110,000 signatures, but the Secretary of State, John Thurston, only validated 77,000. They need 90,704 valid signatures. They're short by roughly 14,000 signatures. The APA spokesperson, Melissa Foltz, is optimistic. Our volunteers are the heroes, she said. They're confident that they'll meet the requirements of the initiative and that it will pass by at least 60% of the vote. The proposal aims to enhance Arkansas's medical cannabis program. Here's how they're going to do that. By allowing healthcare professionals to recommend medical marijuana for any condition, by permitting patients to grow their own cannabis in their homes, by including nurse practitioners, physician assistants, pharmacists, and osteopathic doctors as recommenders. They're extending the medical marijuana card validity from 1 year to 3 years. Also, if federal law passes, it would trigger the end of prohibition here in Arkansas. Also, the initiative will allow dispensaries to sell pre-roll cannabis. Despite setbacks from last year's broader legalization initiative, that was rejected. The extended deadline brings more renewed hope to Arkansanians. For updates on this information, stay tuned right here. I'm Kevin Shakir for We Talk News, right here in Arkansas, the natural state. Just remember, keep it natural, keep it green.
There's an interesting story coming out of Connecticut, and it involves another one of those challenging regulations that all in the industry must deal with. It's insurance. Keep in mind, cannabis is still a federally illegal substance, and finding insurers or underwriters can be very difficult. Now a company in that nutmeg state is fighting with Berkshire Hathaway about millions of dollars of damages to one of its grow rooms. In 2020, a lighting fixture at the grow facility of the TheraPlant licensee blew up and caused a fire. Over 1,000 plants were destroyed and forced that grow facility to shut down. Now the insurer is trying to fight their claim because, after all, they're growing a federally illegal product. The TheraPlant Group claims a $1.3 million loss, and National Fire and Marine Insurance is disputing the claim. That group states that the business losses was due to the damage to the plants, which it says it doesn't cover. Huh? Just another example of how the rest of the world that treats this new industry with disdain. Now it's time to check in on the publicly traded cannabis stocks with our own Doug Miller, who is high on Wall Street.
I'm Doug Miller from High on Wall Street with this week's Cannabis Stock Report for We Talk News. MSO Verano Holdings Corp. entered into an agreement with the Cannabis Company to acquire the MSO's plant-touching operations in Arizona and Virginia. Verano will pay $105 million in cash, stock, and promissory notes to acquire properties in the two states, growing its footprint to 14 U.S. markets. Verano will pay $15 million in cash for the Cannabis Company's Arizona operations, which include one cultivation site, one production facility, and its only 2 marijuana retail stores in the state. In Virginia, Verano is purchasing one cultivation site, one production facility, and 6 stores. So let's see how this affects Verano's stock price. It's trading around $3.62, and the whole market pulled back last week, and this did too. I'm watching for it to dip down some more, and then I'll see where it bottoms and wants to bounce. So trade smart in these red times. And that's this week's Cannabis Stock Report. Reporting for Weed Talk News, I'm Doug Miller.
That will do it for the B block, or second section, of Weed Talk News. But don't go away. We check in on what's going on in New York State that is finally making some progress in shutting down the thousands of illegal operators in the Empire State. On the way to break, here's another part of the interview PCM founder Jimmy Young did with the political director of NORML, Morgan Fox.
The only thing that I have heard that I think might rise to the level of a derivation from the normal process is the fact that HHS used a new two-factor process protocol or consideration to determine whether or not cannabis would be appropriate for maintaining its Schedule 1 status. This is just whether or not there's a high potential for abuse and whether or not there are accepted medical uses for it. Pretty cut and dry. Now, admittedly, this is a criteria that they have not used specifically in the past for cannabis, but the criteria that they were derivating from was only established in 1992, and it was established as in direct response to the DEA's administrative law judges urging the DEA to remove cannabis from the schedule of controlled substances entirely. And DEA administrators fought in the courts for years in order to be able to maintain their ability to ignore their administrative law judges. And one of the things that they were able to do was institute this 5-factor test, which was specifically designed to make sure that cannabis could never be removed from Schedule 1, because the number one criteria in that 5-factor test is whether or not the substance is exactly reproducible and uniform, which is an impossibility for a botanical product.
Yeah, it's a great question because cannabis is very exciting. It's almost like, mom and pop drugstores. You could start whatever you wanted. You could be pretty successful. And then there are the business people who see the revenue potential. And those are the ones that I think they are going to become the buyers going forward. And then smaller companies will be the sellers. And then there'll be another group of like, what the heck happened? And there'll probably be some craft survivors as well. But I think, the access to capital and business, this is becoming a mature business, just like craft beer or the car industry from, the 1910s to today. Yeah, I think Schedule 3 will have radical changes. I think we're going to see consolidation in the space independent of Schedule 3. Schedule 3 will influence the flavor of the consolidation, but it's going to happen no matter what.
Will that open up more capital?
It'll open up more capital, more access. One way or another, as the industry consolidates, they're going to have to get access to capital. The buyers will, and that's going to change the markets fundamentally.